Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Ve'asu li mikdash ve'shachanti betocham v'anachnu nevarech Yah me'atah ve'ad olam. Lord, prepare me, Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true. And with thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you.
Shabbat Shalom and welcome to Central Synagogue. It is so wonderful to be here with you to welcome in Shabbat tonight. 1 year ago this Shabbat, we held our very first service with a fully live stream congregation as we closed the doors of our sanctuary to keep our members and guests safe from a pandemic that was just beginning to loom large. That night, Rabbi Buchdahl said that we would be a fully virtual synagogue for a few weeks at least. And here we are, 1 year later. We've learned so much over the past year, but perhaps the most important thing is that there is nothing virtual about this community. The sense of fellowship and love and support that we all share is very real, even if the means of transmission are not exactly what we would have expected. So welcome to Central. Thank you for being a very real part of our community, no matter where you're joining from. I'm Rabbi Nicole Auerbach, and I'm here in person this evening with our senior cantor, Dan Mutlu, and our rabbinic intern, Chelsea Fuchs. Rabbi Dan Ross is joining us from his home, and we look forward to seeing him a bit later. We are also joined tonight in our virtual pews by our fifth graders and their families, as well as Rabbi Rebecca Rosenthal, Rabbi Mo Soth, Rabbi Ari Lorge, and Cantor Julia Cadrain. It may not look like it, but it is a very full house tonight. We want to extend our special thanks to our amazing musicians and AV crew who make it possible for us all to raise our voices up together tonight. And we invite you to take a moment to wish a Shabbat Shalom to someone you love. If they're in the room, that's great. If not, take a moment to send them a text and just tell them you're thinking about them. I promise it will make their day. So to help us bring in the light of Shabbat tonight, we welcome the families of our Banot Mitzvah, Madeline Pope, Julia Podorowski, and Lola Rubel to kindle the Sabbath lights.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Continue our service by welcoming Shabbat tonight with songs and psalms. You can find these on your order of service. We'll start with L'chuna Ranana, on page 12, and then we'll sing a new song unto God on page 13.
Adonai Nariya Litzur Ishenu Nekad Mafanav Betoda Bizmirot Nariya Lo Lechu Neranena Ladonai Nariya Litzur Ishenu Nekad Mafanav Betoda Bizmirot Nariya Lo Nekad Mafanav Betoda Bizmirot Nariya Lo Tarim lo Asher beyado mechkere aretz betoafu tarim lo Shelo haya ve'hu asaru ve'yavesh et yadav yatzaru bo nishtachave לפני אדוני הוסינו כי הוא אלוהינו ואנחנו אמר איתו בצום ידו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, בשרו מיום ליום ישועתו. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, בשרו מיום ליום ישועתו. ספרו בגויים כבודו, כי גדול אדוני ומהולל מאוד,
נורא הוא הכל אלוהים.
שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, בשרו מיום ליום ישועתו. כי כל אלוהי העמים מלילים,
השמיים
ותכה הארץ
יירם הים ומלואו
לא שמת לכל צבא
שירו לאדוני שיר חדש שירו לאדוני כל הארץ שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו בשרו מיום ליום ישועתו שירו לאדוני שיר חדש שירו לאדוני כל הארץ שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו בשרו מיום ליום ישועתו שירו לאדוני שירו לאדוני שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו בשרו מיום ליום ישועתו. We'll continue now by welcoming Shabbat as if Shabbat were a bride with the words of Lecha Dodi on page 20. We'll sing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela Lecha Dodi likrat kala b'nei Shabbat nekabela שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד השמיענו אל המיוחד אדוני אחד ושמו אחד לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה לך דודי לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה כי היא מקור הברכה מראש מקדם ניסוחה סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה לך דודי לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה התעוררי התעוררי כי בעורק ומאורי אורי אורי שידברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה אומץ עולה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה בואי חלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה לך remain standing now as we turn to our call to worship, Baruch Hu. You can find that on page 146. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Please be seated. We continue on page 148. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, bechochma poteach she'arim, uvitfuna mishanei itim, umahalif et hazmanim, umisader et hakochavim, b'mishmerotechem barakia kirtzono. Borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei hoshach, behoshach mipnei or.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב
This week, I came across a poem by Rabbi Karen Kadar that expressed so beautifully the transition that I'm feeling internally. As winter gives way to spring, bad headlines to better ones, and as the fear that took up residence inside me a year ago becomes entangled with hope. A hope centered around and sustained by the family, friends, and community I love. She writes, "Inside the human heart is fear. There is also hope. The two wrestle constantly, like Jacob and his God. Sometimes one prevails, sometimes the other. The struggle is sometimes silent, other times loud, but it is constant. Fear, hope, fear, hope, flashes of light and shadow twirling inside us all the time. But it is so much easier when there is love. When love is in your life, it becomes the context for it all. Love is the measure of a life well lived. It is the beacon of possibility. When you love, the fear is less harsh, hope a bit stronger."
Baruch atah Adonai Ohev Amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. We're on page 152, our Song of Freedom. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. Who is like you? Who is like you? Who is like you? Adonai. Who is like you? Who is like you? Who is like you? Adonai. מלכותך רעו בניך בוקי הים, לפני משה ומרים צהליאנו אנו באמרו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Who is like you? Adonai. Who is like you? Who is like you? Who is like you? Adonai.
For over a year now, we have become partners with God in spreading a shelter, a Sukkot Shalom, over one another. We have worn our masks, washed our hands, kept our physical distance while doing our best to remain present for one another. We have developed life-saving treatments, registered ourselves, our loved ones, and the most vulnerable among us to get vaccines. As we continue to pray fervently for God's protection, may we continue to protect one another, to bring generosity, humanity, and kindness to the fore.
Sometimes I lay under the moon and thank God I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I'm here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more war, and our children will play one
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים. One day, one day, one day, whoa. One day, 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 one day. We turn to our tefillah, our standing prayer. We're on page 156, and I invite you to rise with us. Adonai svatai tiftach, Adonai svatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha, ufi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai svatai tiftach, Adonai svatai tiftach, ufi yagid tehilatecha, ufi yagid Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, בחיי מתים אתה רב להושיע. משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, בחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשדי עפר. מי כמוך בגבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, בנאמן אתה להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום מהללוך הסלע. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We'll now take a few moments to offer those prayers that are perhaps most dear to us during this silent prayer, and we'll ask you to, as whatever your custom, to stand or to sit to recite these prayers as we continue silently.
וכל אישה אשר נדב ליבם אותם. כל איש וכל אישה אשר נדב ליבם, נדב ליבם אותם, נדב ליבם אותם, הביאו את תרומת אדוני. יא נה 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 what we can, and you can bring your part. Together here we stand with offerings of our heart. I reach out my hand and you can offer yours. Together here we stand, we walk through open doors. וכל אישה אשר נדב ליבם אותם. כל איש וכל אישה אשר נדב ליבם, נדב ליבם אותם, נדב ליבם אותם, הביאו את תרומת אדוני. יא נה 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 נה
In this week's Torah portion, by Akel Pekudei, the children of Israel finally complete their collective effort to build the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary in which God dwelled among them during their journey through the wilderness. As Kenner Mutlu just sang, when this project began in Parshat Truma, God told Moses to ask our ancestors to bring gifts to support the endeavor if their hearts moved them to do so. And this week we read that they brought so many gifts that they had to be told to stop. That's a lot of moved hearts. We can imagine that among our ancestors, there were some whose hearts were moved to give, but whose bodies would not allow them to do so because of pain or illness. And we can also imagine that with their overflowing generosity and love, our ancestors noted the suffering of those members of their community and took it upon themselves to carry their gifts to God. This evening, we do the same, offering our support to those members of our community who are suffering from afflictions of mind, body, or spirit. As we pray Misha Berach tonight, may those in need of healing right now know that they still have so many gifts to give us and to God. This Shabbat, we at Central Synagogue are holding in our hearts Leibish Abba, Barbara Aiden, Rivka Bracha Bat Avraham, Kathy Barron, Eileen Berger, Donald Brief, Papa Butch, Jerry Calderon, Lou Chen, Erwin Diamond, Alexandra Duran, Daniel Elstein, Marcia Firestone, Corey Flom, Jerry Friedman, Janie Furse, Ashley Goodman, Alex Hochberg, Howard Hochberg, Anna Kaufman, Marjorie Lentz, Roy Littman, Erwin Merkatz, Ronnie Oppenheim, Brahida Perez Prado, Sharon Resnick, Carol Roman, Leslie Rosenberg, Mona Saferstein, Sandy Schupper, Patricia Sindel, Bill Smith, Herbert Strauss, Nancy Thaler, Clara Turkenix, Jane Vigon, Alan Wolf, and Pam Young. To those names, we add the names of anyone who you're thinking of this evening who is in need of healing as we join together in these words of Mishaberach.
Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy, will reap in joy. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy.
As our ancestors brought their abundant gifts to God, so too do we have many reasons to feel the blessings of abundance in our lives right now. And at this time, we are going to share in celebrating those gifts with each other. You know how this goes. If one of these gifts applies to you, please rise and remain standing. If you're becoming a bat mitzvah tomorrow, Maddie, Julia, and Lola, or if you're celebrating with our Benot mitzvah, we invite you to rise. If you celebrated your birthday this past week or will celebrate one in the week to come, please rise. If you celebrated an anniversary this past week or will celebrate one in the week to come, please rise. If you welcomed a new member of your family this past week by wedding, by birth, by adoption, or by some other way, we invite you to rise. If you received a long-awaited medical gift this week, like an organ or a vaccine, or if you helped someone receive a long-awaited medical gift, please rise. Sunday, March 14th is Pi Day, 314, 3.14. So if you like the number pi, or if you like eating pie, please rise. And last but not least, public service announcement. This weekend is Spring Forward. So don't forget to set your clocks ahead. But this does not mean we can celebrate but this does mean, it stinks to set your clocks ahead, but this does mean that we can celebrate the arrival finally of daylight saving time. And so if you're looking forward to spring and some more hours of sunshine, please rise as we join together in this blessing of gratitude.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. Please be seated.
It does my heart good to see all of those swaying bodies and smiling faces on the screen. Tonight we enter the Hebrew month of Nisan, which brings with it the first harbingers of spring and the promise of Passover. The beginning of any month carries with it the anticipation of a fresh start, but entering into this month is extra special Because in the Torah this month, Nisan was designated as the first month of the Jewish calendar. Just before giving instructions for the Passover sacrifice, 2 weeks before the eventual liberation of the Israelites from Egypt, God tells Moses and Aaron, "This month shall mark for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first of months of the year for you." Eventually, Jewish tradition will give us 4 different new years. Rosh Hashanah marks the anniversary of the creation of the world. Tu B'Shvat is the new year for counting the age of trees, and the first of Elul is the new year for counting animal tithes. I'm sure that one will come in handy. But tonight marks the birthday of the Jewish people as they prepared to move forward to their own redemption. By placing this month first, the Torah ensures that our story will always begin with the anticipation of our liberation. If the 15th of Shvat is the new year for the trees, then tonight, the 1st of Nisan, is the new year for hope. And boy, do we need it. Because tonight's celebration of a new year in the history of our people coincides with another anniversary. 1 year ago, New York shuttered itself, closing businesses and schools and warning residents to leave their homes only if absolutely necessary. What was supposed to be a few weeks of hunkering down has turned into a year of previously unimaginable loss, hardship, and disruption. In this week's Torah portion, Moses calls all the community who are Chacham Lev, wise of heart, and Nadiv Lev, generous of heart, to contribute their skills to the building of the Mishkan, that portable sanctuary that Rabbi Ross referred to that allowed God's presence to dwell among them as they wandered through the wilderness. When all of that work is done and the Mishkan is finally assembled, we're told that Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled upon it and the presence of Adonai filled the Mishkan. When the cloud lifted from the tabernacle, the Israelites would set out and go on their various journeys. But if the cloud did not lift, they would not set out until such time as it did lift. We have so many in this community who are both wise and generous of heart, who have helped us to build a sacred environment in which we can feel God's presence among us, even as we have been unable to gather in person. We have staff who have honed new skills to help us gather using electronics. We have congregants who've reached out to support their fellow members. We have volunteers who have continued to feed our neighbors through our breakfast program, and core group leaders who have helped build new connections. And we have clergy who are sharing their passions for pickles or Sondheim over coffee every week. We've seen our members embrace meditation and Havdalah and to grow our daily minyan. It's been remarkable to witness God's presence reflected in the care and compassion of this community. And yet, for months we've been held outside our sanctuary, feeling a bit frozen in time, like the Israelites wondering when the cloud would lift, signaling that it's time to move forward. The cloud has not yet lifted. We need to hang on a little longer. But unlike last year at this time, we can see a little more light and a little more hope on the horizon. Speaking of the new CDC guidelines allowing vaccinated people to gather in small groups with loved ones, Dr. Rebecca Weintraub told the New York Times, "It's been well studied that anticipation is a significant component of joy. These guidelines help each person coming in for a vaccine anticipate future joy. As a physician and a vaccinator, I'm thrilled." I don't know if there's any better description of the feeling of these early days of spring than the anticipation of future joy. The writer and teacher Parker Palmer writes, Before spring becomes beautiful, it is plug ugly, nothing but mud and muck. I have walked in the early spring through fields that will suck your boots off, a world so wet and woeful it makes you yearn for the return of ice. But in that muddy mess, the conditions for rebirth are being created. He says, though spring begins slowly and tentatively, it grows with a tenacity that never fails to touch me. The smallest and most tender shoots insist on having their way, coming through ground that looked only a few weeks earlier as if it would never grow anything again. The crocuses and snowdrops do not bloom for long, but their mere appearance, however brief, is always a harbinger of hope. And from these small beginnings, hope grows at a geometric rate. Right now, we may be exhausted from a year of wading through muck. But on this anniversary of our world growing smaller, Nisan, the month of Passover and of liberation, comes to remind us that even in the darkest times, greater freedom and redemption lie ahead. We see this not only in the green shoots that are starting to emerge from the ground, but also in the plans we're starting to make. This week, I met with some Central members, many of whom had not traveled in a year, who shared their dreams and plans for places they hope to go as vaccines become more available and the pandemic begins to recede. Most of these plans are 6 months or even a year away, but the very idea of planning itself contains a kind of hope that is felt out of reach for so long. Our tradition understands that after a long winter, we may need some encouragement to lift our eyes and take notice of possibility. There's a special blessing that we say only during the month of Nisan, when we see the first blossoming fruit trees of the year. Upon seeing these first promising buds, we're told to say, "Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, in whose world nothing is lacking, and who made wondrous creations and beautiful trees for human beings to enjoy." This time-limited blessing wakes us up and teaches us to be on the lookout for the tiny buds that will someday bear fruit, signs that more abundant days are ahead. So as we go about our lives in this new month, let's keep this blessing in our pockets. May it give us the encouragement we need in these muddy early days of spring as we take our first tentative steps into a new year to keep our eyes peeled for signs of hope. Happy New Year.
We'll turn now to our prayer books on page 282 and recite that prayer that has a promise for all of us, a promise of hope and a better future. Please rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל העולם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו ויתקדש שמי רבה.
Our thoughts now turn to those who are no longer with us in body, but who are eternally with us in spirit. Central Synagogue is mourning the passing in recent days of these dear ones: Cy Baum, husband of Judy, father of Andrew; Gary Fabian; Gerald Fengel, father of Cheryl, Brian, and Elisa; Pearl Hendler, mother of Susan Flom, Mark, Michelle, and Richard; Barbara Linhart, mother of Ted and Peter; Charles Lutke, stepfather of Peter Blum; Miriam Schaefer, mother of Leslie Perkins; Arlene Katisker Westreich, mother of Neil and Marjorie; and Renee Weiss, mother of Deborah Weiner, Jeffrey, and Cheryl. We name as our own at Central those members of the American Armed Forces who died serving their country this past week, and we are grateful to report that there are no names to share. There are sadly names of those who perished in mass shootings in America, among them Dante Johnson, Albert Alexander Harris, Miguel Hernandez, and Yvonne Cobbs. This Shabbat, we are observing the yahrzeits, the anniversaries of the passing of these loved ones: Morton Abram, Seidel Applebaum, Rose Astor, Florence Bass, Al Berg, Abraham Berger, Irving Blasberg, Jeanette Brenner, Grace Friedman Brody, Stanley Kane, Carol Chanin Stone, Claire Charney, Suzanne Cornbleet Johnson, Sarah Cuba, May Dax, Harry Diamond, Florence Dreisen, David Dubin, Sally Spiro Epstein, Max Fierstein, Jacqueline Fish, Ethel Friedband, Rosalind Frey, Antonio Glassberg, Simeon Gluckson, Nelia Goldseeker, Leslie Gordon, Jay Gottlieb, Carolyn Gould, Phyllis Green, Suzanne Greener, Emily Greenwald-Meyer, Annette Grobe, Alan Gutstein, Martin Halperin, Ruth Halpern, Paul Harris, Ida Hart, Albert Hertog, Miriam Hausner, Shirley Hayes, Philip Heller, Barnett Jason, Esther Jones, Louise Keisch, Harriet Rose Katz, Leona Biersuck Katz, William Katzman, Edna Kaufman, Catherine Koenig, Estelle Koplik, Stephen Korn, Ruth Koster, Esther Kravitz, Elsie Crum, Barbara Kupperman, Robert Leibowitz, Judith Lieberman, Irene Lawrence, Eugene Lynn, Carolyn Matchless, Martin Markman, Sandy Messing, Eddie Morodoff, Rita Nurnberg, Philip Ostroff, Sandra Pasternak, Gertrude Perlberg, Marilyn Roberts, Robert Rocklin, Abraham Roller, Isidore Roseman, Lillian Rosenthal, Sarah Rothenberg, Hortense Sable, Seymour Schreibman, Fritzie Siegel, Ethel Shapiro, Lucius Shapiro, Harriet Shulkin, Ruth Siegel, Stanford Silvershots, Erwin Cirrus, Mickey Stein, Everett Steinberg, Edwin Stern Jr., Max Steiner, Carol Chanin Stone, Charles Talley, William Talley, Sherry Targoff, Oscar Tauber, Martin Bruce Tepper, Eric Wasserman, Sarah Weinstein, William Weisberg, Esther Hadberg Weiss, and Seymour Zuckerman. If you are in the period of Shiva, the first 7 days following the passing of someone dear to you, we invite you to rise at this time in body or spirit. If you are in the period of Shloshim, the first 30 days, we invite you to rise in body or spirit. If you are in the period of Shana, the first year, we invite you to rise in body or spirit. And if you are observing a yahrzeit this Shabbat, we invite you to rise in body or spirit. Zichronam livracha. May their memories ever be for a blessing. We rise together in body or spirit with those in mourning as we join together in the words of Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Yitgadal ve'yitkadash shemei rabbah. Be'alma divrach yirutei ve'amlich malchutei. B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam lamei almaya. Yitbarach ve'yishtabach ve'yitpa'ar ve'yitramam ve'yitnaseh. Ve'yitadar ve'yitaleh ve'yitalal shemei dekudesha brichu. Le'ela mimkol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Ta'amiran be'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlama rabbah min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'yimru amen.
So long as we live, they too shall live. They are now a part of us. They are now a part of us. They are now a part of us. As we remember.
Shabbat Shalom. My name is Lauren Pretzfelder, and I'm a student in this year's confirmation class at Central Synagogue. We are so happy so many of you are joining us virtually and hope you will join us for future Shabbat services. As always, you can join us through our live stream, Facebook Live, YouTube channel, and JBS. To learn more about upcoming programming, please visit our website. Information about Shabbat morning worship can be found on our website as well. Mazel tov to our Benot Mitzvah and their families, Madeline Pope, Julia Podorowski, and Lola Rubel. It is such a joy to see you taking your place in our community at Central, and we look forward to the time when you'll be in my place making the announcements as a confirmation student. Congratulations again. Please join us in the Kiddush, which can be found on page 5 of our prayer books.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidishanu b'mitzvotav beratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit Ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher litziat Mitzrayim Ki vanu bacharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol amim ve'shabbat kodshecha Be'ahava uveratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Amen.
And you are the lucky one with the
I'm the
challah
lucky
tonight.
one. It's huge and gorgeous.
Let's say the blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. We're going to conclude with Oseh Shalom. And we're going to get to see our 5th grade families on the screen singing with us. So we might not be able to hear you, but we can see you, and we want to see that energy. Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh Shalom bimroma, hu yaseh Shalom aleinu,
שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.